Hello everyone, Silent here and welcome back to another Bugrock of the Week episode. Today we're going to be taking a look at all of the weird and strange pathfinding issues having to do with the mobs and creatures in the Bedrock edition of Minecraft. There's actually a staggering amount of pathfinding issues once you start digging into it, and I mean like a staggering amount. Some of these are pretty fun and harmless, while others will affect your iron farms and trading halls, and others still completely ruin a whole ton of mob farms having to do with turtle eggs. So it is good to keep in mind all of these bugs when you're messing with pretty much any kind of mob on the Bedrock edition. So hopefully you guys do enjoy today's episode. If you haven't seen the previous episode of Bugrock, that is where we take a look at all the weirdest and strangest bugs in the 1.11 Village and Pillage update for the Bedrock edition. There are seriously some very strange and very weird bugs in this update. If you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. It is a super weird one. But without further ado, let's hop into all the pathfinding bugs in this video. So let's get the biggest bug out of the way first, and that is that the undead mobs of the Bedrock edition don't really care about turtle eggs. So typically what would happen is an undead mob would try and pathfind towards turtle eggs and then try and destroy them and stomp on them and just kind of break the little guys, which is super cruel. But it just doesn't happen. As you can see, these guys don't really care, and they are in with sight of, several different turtle eggs. So this is definitely a bug that needs to be fixed, as this turtle egg mechanic is actually extremely useful, not only for Pigmen farms, but also for zombie spawners, and just basically any farm that uses the undead mobs of the game. Like, this would be wonderful for a stray farm in a cold biome, but they just do not pathfind to it whatsoever, which is really quite unfortunate. So I know at one point on Bedrock Edition, this feature did work perfectly fine, so that basically as soon as you spawn a mob, they would, attack the turtle eggs if they had line of sight. They would run towards them super angrily, but as you can see, now it can take up to several minutes for any of these pigmen to care at all, which is kind of a big issue for a lot of different farms and contraptions. Would be really nice if this was fixed. Now, I know not all of you guys watch until the end of the video, because that's just how YouTube works, but do please upvote all of the bug report links down in the description of the video. Upvoting the bug report links or leaving a comment on them or just putting some additional information on them seriously does help get these bugs fixed in the game. So please do check them out. Links are in the description. So the next most annoying bug that I have for you today is villagers and just mobs in general being able to control minecarts that they're in. As you can see, that guy just like reversed direction, and this is actually kind of a tedious one to reproduce. I've been sitting here for a couple of minutes, and this guy finally was able to control his own minecart. I was trying around a lot of different things with zombies and minecarts, making these guys chase each other, but that didn't really work out. But now, as you can see, that guy did just control his minecart several times, and there he goes again. So this is actually a super annoying bug. This has been around on Java Edition for a very long time, but I believe it was fixed in 1.13 or, somewhere around there, and it would be really nice if this was fixed on Bedrock Edition as well, because it's a pretty terrible bug and it makes so many things much more tedious when it comes to just transporting mobs, especially villagers. Having them control their own minecarts is really quite the handful. So a little bit of a note, if you try and reproduce this yourself, keep in mind it's kind of a tedious one. It doesn't always happen immediately, so you gotta kind of play around with it a little bit. You might want to set up a track system similar to how I have right here. And also just don't have the zombie in a minecart either, because that will mess things up, and you don't want to touch the minecart either, because that will of course give them momentum, and minecarts keep momentum for a very long time. Another villager-based one for you. Villagers can very easily get stuck when pathfinding. So for instance, you've probably noticed this. Villagers will just get stuck standing on beds, and then they'll basically never move for the life of them. Very annoying bug. It causes them to unlink from their workstations, and then they won't restock their trades. Overall, it's a pretty annoying mess. I've simulated it here, of course, but again, when you see this happening in your world, it's generally en masse with like a lot of villagers at one time. Pretty annoying. And then another one has to do with villagers and just mobs in general getting stuck on trapdoors. This one doesn't last forever, but it is pretty annoying. So whenever a villager or a mob stops on top of a trapdoor, they don't really know how to pathfind. As you can see, this guy is kind of shaking. However, they can pathfind from like here over to here just fine. The issue is when they actually stop on top of the trapdoor, then they just don't really know what to do. That guy just jumped over there. Yeah, see, he can pathfind across. That was actually very, very professional. Good job, dude. But yeah, it's mostly just the issue when they actually stop on there. Sometimes they'll get themselves out of it either by miracles like that, or they'll just slowly nudge themselves off of the trapdoor. Here's a better example of this happening. So we can summon a villager, summon a zombie, and as you can see, the guy will try and run away, but he'll just get stuck right on top of those beds. And that is pretty much all there is to it. They don't really know how to pathfind over beds. Kind of a big issue, and it really breaks a lot of things. So our next one has to do with animals and mobs trying to pathfind over 1.5 block tall walls, such as a block with a lower half slab on top of it. So if we just go ahead and summon a sheep in there and a cow in this one, we should see them walk this way eventually and then start jumping to try and get over that. Thank you, perfect example. So this guy over here will do that as well soon. And yeah, pretty straightforward. They will basically do this forever because they cannot reach the other side. They don't realize that they can't jump over that. And now they're jumping in perfect unison. So overall, this is pretty harmless, except that they're going to be using up a tiny bit of your CPU just trying to infinitely pathfind. Overall, not a big deal, but should be fixed nonetheless. Our next one has to do with bamboo. So basically, mobs don't really realize it exists, so they just try and walk straight on through that. We can demonstrate that by summoning a few pigs in here, and these guys should try and walk straight out of here, but they'll just run straight into the bamboo, not realizing that it's a thing that actually exists. So there goes this guy trying to pathfind in this direction, and yeah, he just doesn't really realize that the bamboo is there, and these guys will basically get stuck in there. This is really easy to see if you have a very large bamboo area. Typically animals will spawn in there and then just kind of jump against the bamboo for ages and ages. Kind of evil, but also kind of stupid at the same time. If we break the bamboo, you can see that this guy is still trying to pathfind forward. He just doesn't realize that there's bamboo in his way. Our next issue has to do with mobs not knowing how to pathfind through fires. So for instance, wither skeletons and zombie pigmen usually will get stuck on the fire and just keep on spinning around like that. And that means that they think that they are on fire when they are actually immune to fire. So this happens with lava as well, and this is something that was fixed in the 1.14 versions of Java Edition. However, it is still around on the Bedrock Edition, and we can demonstrate that with the zombie pigmen as well. Let's go ahead and shoot that guy, get him to pathfind over here. As you can see, he spins around on the fire, which means that he thinks he is on fire. And when the fire is not there, he does not do that, of course. So perfect example of both of these guys spinning around on the fire when they're not even trying to pathfind to a player or anything like that. So we can see this happen with lava as well. Typically they should be able to walk right through the lava, but as you will see, they will just kind of like push each other into the lava. They won't want to actually walk into it. And then once they're actually in the lava, they don't do anything at all. They don't try and walk across it or anything. They are basically just stuck there. And this is actually a really big issue on Bedrock because basically nothing despawns unless it's super high light level. But that doesn't really happen in the Nether, even when things are standing in lava. So mobs getting stuck in lava is actually a pretty big deal. And this is even an even bigger issue because undead mobs now sink in lava as well. So you very well might have a massive amount of undead mobs, or just mobs in general, at the bottom of your lava lakes in the Nether, and have basically no way of fixing it. So we can see that wither skeletons don't like lava either. They will occasionally push each other in, but they're very reluctant to actually get into the lava themselves. And I will also throw up some footage from the Java edition where both of these mechanics with wither skeletons and pigmen are working properly. They can easily pathfind through lava and through fire as well. And as you can see, it's just a pretty smooth little process. So that is it working properly, and that is how it should work on the Bedrock edition, but it does not. So I have two bonus bugs for you today that I cannot reproduce because they're just super rare, but they do happen. So the first one is kind of like an underwater breakdancing drown, and this is pretty funny. I've seen it a handful of times in several different worlds and realms, creative and survival, and honestly, it's just pretty hilarious. I love this thing. It's really funny, but it's also a thing that should probably be fixed. And also, there's another bug that is pretty rare, but that does occasionally happen, is that sometimes a mob will land on a magma block and it will not take damage from the magma blocks, and it will not pathfind anywhere either, but as soon as it does move or get nudged, then it will start taking damage from the magma blocks as well. Pretty rare bug, but it can happen, and you might notice it sometimes if you have a flushing mob farm that pushes everything down onto magma blocks. So if you want to see these bugs get fixed on the Bedrock edition, of course, be sure to upvote all of the bug reports linked down in the description of the video. Maybe also leave a comment on the bug reports as well if you have experienced the bug yourself, or just leave any additional information you have about that particular bug. Honestly, just leaving a comment and a little bit of an upvote on the bug reports seriously makes a massive difference in getting these bugs fixed on the Bedrock edition. So thank you all very much for the support on the bug tracker as always. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe consider sharing it around with your friends, that way they can enjoy it as well and be aware of all the weird and crazy bugs that are on this platform, or just leave a like on the video. Anything is greatly appreciated and does help out the video immensely. And if you want to catch the next episode, be sure to subscribe, of course, but I will see you guys down in that comment section and in the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and then there was silence.